Jacobs syndrome, Klinefelters, and the rise of biological ambiguity. Welcome back. I'm Adeline Atlas, 11-time published author, and this is The Elimination of Gender, a series exploring the structural, chemical, and technological dismantling of gender in modern society. Today, we're going deeper into the biology, focusing not on ideology or identity, but on the body itself, how chromosomal anomalies are becoming more common, and what that says about the future of human sex differentiation. The subject may be unfamiliar to some viewers, but it's critical if we're trying to understand not just where gender is going, but how the very definition of male and female is being destabilized, literally from the inside out. Let's start with two syndromes most people have never heard of, but which are becoming increasingly relevant: Jacobs syndrome and Klinefelter syndrome. These are chromosomal anomalies, genetic conditions where individuals are born with extra sex chromosomes. In a typical biological male, the chromosomes are XY. In a typical biological female, they are XX. But in these syndromes, that balance is disrupted. Jacobs syndrome, or 47.XYY, occurs when a male has an extra Y chromosome. This used to be considered rare, but it's now estimated to affect 1 in every 1,000 male births. Individuals with XYY are usually taller than average and may experience learning or speech difficulties. While most XYY males still present as biologically male, the syndrome brings subtle complications in hormonal regulation, fertility, and social development. In some cases, there's increased estrogen activity or unusual pubertal patterns, which result in biological ambiguity, even though the genotype still reflects male identity. Klinefelter's syndrome, on the other hand, involves the presence of an extra X chromosome, 47.XXY. It affects approximately 1 in 600 boys and is one of the most common chromosomal abnormalities. Males with Klinefelters often have lower testosterone, small testicles, reduced facial and body hair, and may develop gynecomastia, enlarged breast tissue. Many are infertile. While most still identify as male, their hormonal profiles resemble something more mixed: elevated estrogen, suppressed androgenic function, and altered physical traits. These aren't just rare disorders. They are signs of increasing genetic instability around the most basic human category: biological sex. What's alarming is not just that these conditions exist, but that they may be rising. Some researchers now believe that we are seeing a spike in chromosomal anomalies, and they are starting to ask why. Is this purely evolutionary variation, or is something external pushing biology off course? This is where environmental toxicology intersects with genetics, and where gender becomes a biological casualty of modern industry. Endocrine-disrupting chemicals, xenoestrogens, phthalates, PFAS, and BPA, are everywhere. Found in plastic containers, food packaging, pesticides, receipts, and even tap water, these chemicals mimic estrogen and interfere with the hormonal signaling pathways that govern sexual differentiation. When exposure happens during critical phases of development, especially in utero, these chemicals can influence how sex characteristics form, both at the genetic and anatomical levels. Some scientists now suggest that prenatal chemical exposure could be altering not only hormone levels, but also chromosomal expression and development. Dr. Shanna Swan, whose research we've covered in earlier videos, has already demonstrated the link between endocrine disruptors and falling sperm counts. But she and others are also beginning to connect the dots between this chemical exposure and the rise in ambiguous sex traits, including intersex conditions and chromosomal irregularities. In animal studies, exposure to atrazine and phthalates has led to male frogs growing ovaries, fish developing both male and female sex organs, and mammals exhibiting infertility or malformed reproductive systems. The evidence is overwhelming. What we're doing to the environment is now doing something back to us, and that something is erasing the biological lines we once took for granted. This doesn't mean that Jacobs syndrome or Klinefelters are being caused entirely by environmental exposure. These are genetic anomalies, and they can occur spontaneously. But we have to ask, why does it seem like they're becoming more common? Why are we seeing increasing reports of children born with hormonal imbalances, genital ambiguity, and altered sexual development, far beyond what was recorded in previous generations? What's changed is the chemical load. What's changed is the ubiquity of hormonal mimics in our everyday products and food. And what's changing is the biological baseline of humanity itself. There's also a deeper layer to this discussion that must be addressed. As society embraces the cultural narrative that gender is fluid, the rising occurrence of ambiguous biology serves as a strange parallel, or perhaps a precursor. In other words, biology is beginning to mirror the ideology. And whether that is by coincidence or design remains an open question. Let's consider this. In a world that is increasingly governed by transhumanist visions, where reproduction is outsourced to technology, gender is decoupled from sex, and AI is viewed as the next step in human evolution, what use is there for binary sex categories? From a purely functional standpoint, if we're heading towards synthetic reproduction, artificial wombs, and digital consciousness, then male and female are no longer reproductive necessities. They are legacy traits, redundant, obsolete. Is it possible that environmental exposure to endocrine disruptors is a form of passive eugenics? not in the traditional sense of sterilization or selection, but in the gradual suppression of the very biological systems that reproduce humanity as we know it. If hormonal chaos becomes normalized, if genetic ambiguity becomes more frequent, then sex itself becomes harder to define. And if sex is difficult to define, then gender, reproduction, and even lineage start to unravel. Now pair that with the cultural movement toward gender neutrality, non-binary identification, and post-gender ideologies, and the convergence becomes impossible to ignore. This is not just a social revolution, it is a biological reprogramming. And it raises the possibility that we are not simply adapting to new identities. We are being biologically prepared for a world where identity, as we currently know it, no longer applies. To be clear, this is not about blaming individuals born with these conditions, nor is it about casting judgment on those who identify outside the traditional binary. The concern is broader. It's about what kind of human future we are creating, knowingly or unknowingly, through our exposure to synthetic environments, chemical disruptors, and ideological shifts that decenter biology. There are implications here for everything from medicine to politics to spirituality. How do we define health when the baseline is changing? How do we write laws about sex and gender when those categories are no longer consistent? And what happens to human connection when people can no longer find biological resonance in one another? These are not hypothetical questions. They are emerging challenges, legal, social, and ethical, that will define the next century. The rise of biological ambiguity, whether due to genetics or environmental pressure, is not just a medical issue. It's a signpost, a warning, a disruption of something ancient and essential. We are entering a period where the human blueprint is being altered, not metaphorically, but at the level of chromosomes, organs, and hormonal codes. That shift demands our attention, our discernment, and a serious reevaluation of what it means to be human in the 21st century. Hi, I am Adeline Atlas, 11 times published author, and SOS, School of Soul has a brand new series, the AI and Future Technology series. Look, you know the world is changing, and no, it's not going back to normal. Normal is over, and what's coming next is beyond anything we were prepared for. The School of Soul, AI and Future Technology series includes 319 videos on 1. The Download Society, How Data Has Replaced Destiny. 2. Predictive Future. Your next moves aren't random, they're forecasted. 3. Social Credit Systems. The behavioral economy now governs access. 4. Hive Mind. Synthetic telepathy and collective algorithmic control. 5. Nanobots inside you. Medical, military, and programmable intrusions. 6. Grief Tech. AI-fueled digital resurrection and simulated comfort. 7. Uploading your mind, consciousness transfer, and data-based identity. 8. Deep fakes plus AI clones. The replication of reality and identity theft. 9. Quantum humans. The merger of biology with quantum systems. 10. Digital afterlife, where your data goes when you die. 11. Resurrection science, reviving life through synthetic methods. 12. Immortal science, the end of death as we know it. 13. Longevity science, gene editing, anti-aging, and bio-upgrades. 14. Designer babies, engineered perfection before birth. 15. Artificial wombs, birth decoupled from the female body. 16. 3D printing, printing organs, limbs, and even humans. 17. The humanoid era, the rise of synthetic beings among us. 18. Legacy humans, the slow phase-out of unmodified analog people. 19. Smart cities, algorithmic environments that watch and decide. 20. Cloud-based societies, citizenship without borders or bodies. 21. Hackable humans, emotion, memory, and behavior under code. 22. Biometric scanning, your body is your password and your prison. 23. Sex tech, intimacy reprogrammed by machines. 24. Extinction of gender, fluidity, deletion, and design of identity. Every topic is fully explored with real-world technologies, patents, case studies, ethical analysis, and future forecasts. These aren't someday discussions. This is already happening. Join the SOS School of Soul Vault to overstand the future before it's implemented on you.